For this episode today, I'm excited to introduce you to my wife, Kayla. She's normally behind the camera and helping out with a lot of things behind the scenes. She's going to jump in here and join us. So, are you ready? Hey, welcome, babe.
Hi.
Thanks for coming over to this side of the camera with me today. So before we jump into things, I just wanted to say that this is not our normal style of filming. We're almost always outside on some crazy adventure, connecting the lessons from the Bible with some amazing places. Today, we're coming to you from the Journey Church World Headquarters, aka our fifth wheel. This
RV,
is
our
right.
home,
This is where we live. For now,
Mhm.
I wanted to kind of pick your brain a little bit. It's been a few months and since we've launched really officially the Journey Church, and I'm curious about kind of your perspective on things so far. Like, what do you think's going on? How do you feel like it's going?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't really know what to expect because this is all really new and just traveling and being on the road. I think the coolest thing for me is just all the people that we've met, either in person or online, or people we've connected with that are just totally on fire for Jesus, and just hearing, yeah, why they're doing what they're doing, and their encounters with God. And that's just been amazing just to see so many people curious about him, curious about learning, but also just really on fire for God.
How about anything that's surprised you or been maybe not what you expected so far?
I think there's probably been a lot that I didn't expect. This is all really new to both of us. Yeah, and just all the work that goes into these is humongous. I had no idea whatsoever. Just how much time goes into filming and refilming and editing and just developing everything and making sure it's all working, and tech issues and everything else is you put a lot of work into that. So
Yeah, it definitely can be a bit overwhelming at times, as we've learned together. But it's also super rewarding to see how God provides the direction and the help with everything, just week by week. Just helps us grow and learn to depend on Him more and more.
yeah, and that is actually what we're going to take a look at this week. God working in the lives of people and how it started to build momentum around Jesus and his ministry. And our why question this week is, why is it important to share your God story?
Well, over and over, this is what we see happening throughout the Gospels. When people have these Jesus encounters, they walk away with a deep conviction that God is real, and they begin to share their stories. And I think this is what is so powerful. And I also think this is where we discover the answer to our question in this episode, right? What was the question? Why is it important that you share your God stories, your God is real stories? We see over and over when people share their God is real stories or reviews about God, it results in more people wanting to check out Jesus for themselves.
How incredible is it that there's no need to convince them or sell people on Jesus? No talking them into going somewhere or convincing them anything. What we see happening all the time is someone encountered Jesus, something happens to them or someone else, and they're so affected by what they see that they can't help but tell their story to others. And it's those stories that really draw people to want to know and go and see for themselves.
Now, I know everyone knows the power of reviews in the world that we live in. I mean, really, honestly, will anybody actually buy anything online if it has zero reviews? A product with zero reviews at this point seems like such a huge risk, doesn't it? On the other hand, if some product or business has tons of good reviews, all these customers raving about it, then you naturally feel better about trying it out for yourself, right? And I think that's kind of how it works with people telling their stories about God or their Jesus encounters. They're giving rave reviews about their experience with Jesus. And I think it draws people to want to learn more about Jesus for themselves.
Yeah, and I think it's easy for people to look back and at what Jesus was doing in the Gospels and say, well, yeah, I mean, he was healing people and he was doing all these miracles and helping people in all sorts of different ways. Of course they were all talking about it, and
Mhm.
of course more and more people wanted to go and see, but that was then and this is now. Do people still have God Israel encounters? And if so, are they sharing those, telling the stories like they did then?
We know of nearly 500 kids that have been helped in a powerful way. And beyond the kids, there have been hundreds of families blessed, all because God is real. And He showed up and He made Himself known to lots of people over the past few years. And it all started back in 2019. And after working in ministry for a lot of years and going through some pretty hard stuff personally, I spent some time away on a sabbatical and doing some soul searching and asking God while I was away to help me do a heart check personally. What was I doing because it was my job, and what was I doing because I was just a Christian, right? And the more we talked and the more I asked God to help me rearrange my life and show me where He wanted me to be involved with Him, not just church stuff, but just plain old for Jesus stuff. Well, during that time, I always sensed God pointing me to serve kids. And He planted this idea in me about building a bed for a kid that was sleeping on the floor and maybe needed a bed. Well, the only problem was I had no idea if there were any kids that were actually sleeping on the floor or even needed a bed. So, probably January 2019, I sat down at my kitchen table and I posted something in a local Facebook group asking if anybody knew of a kid sleeping on the floor that maybe needed a bed. And I didn't hold back in the post. I just said right up front, this is something that God laid on my heart. Let me know if anybody knows of a kiddo in need. And man, within days, there were a number of requests, and then they just kept coming and coming and coming. And it snowballed pretty quick to within a week, I had over 500 requests for a bed. Well, I was a little excited and definitely freaked out because I hadn't even built one bed yet. I had no idea where the money would come from or the time to try and help all these kids that needed a bed. But I was sure this was something that God called me to. So I sat back down at the kitchen table, told God, all right, I'm in. I'll rearrange my schedule, I'll rearrange my budget, and I'll start building beds. But you're going to have to sort out the rest, right? That's exactly what He did. Within days, people started reaching out to ask how they could help, right? It was like God was obviously up to something, and I think people could sense it. And so within a couple of weeks, somebody that had reached out to me put together a little website for this thing that we were doing to build beds. And then an awesome graphic designer offered to do a whole logo and brand design for this little bed thing that we were putting together. And that's where the name was born during that time, Blessing Beds. And God was really at work in all of this. And so I and a good friend headed to the basement to figure out how to build the first blessing bed. We had a great time roughing out the plans and mocking up different ideas and figuring it out. Not long after that, some other friends from church heard about it and they wanted in. That was Zach and Daisy, and they jumped all in. And then another couple of young gals that were attending college, Brooke and Kelsey, and another friend, Wendy, jumped in. And before I knew what was happening, literally there was 8 or 9 of us around that kitchen table. It was so cool. God was at work drawing people to Himself and His plans. And from the very beginning, God has been at work in this thing. And all along the way, people have experienced Him. I mean, seriously, there's so many amazing God is real encounters with people, and they've shared about them with their friends and family along the way. And so, guess what happened? More and more people wanted to come and see what this was all about. So this grassroots effort that started in my basement ended up being featured on the regional NBC and Fox News affiliates. Every newspaper in the surrounding region ran front page stories All of it pointing to God working in some amazing ways through the lives of some regular people in a basement in some guy's house to make sure that kids had a bed to sleep in.
So one of the ways that I saw God moving through blessing beds was definitely within the actual volunteer nights, or what we called were the build nights. Um, whether you were there for building a bed, whether you were going to be help sanding it, whether you were going to help be staining it, no matter what, every single room, I feel like I would walk around and just hear good conversations going on, and not just, hey, how are you, but actually getting to know people and getting to know, hey, how has your week been? How are these situations going, and how can I be praying for you?
Hey, my name's Joey. I was the graphic designer for a lot of the Blessing Bed stuff. And I was able to see God's hand at work in some amazing ways throughout the whole Blessing Beds experience. The first way was probably just how everything came together. Thad had this idea to start doing Blessing Beds, and there's too many little stories to tell, but he would just come to us with all these stories of how perfectly things were working out. He needed this thing, and then all of a sudden some friend from Spokane would offer hey, I got this free, whatever, and give it to Thad for free. And just so many things like that just made it really, really clear that God was doing something great with the Blessing Beds, the whole Blessing Beds project. The second way, and the one that was most obvious to me, because I was, part of the team, was simply the interactions amongst the team. We had this goal, we had this vision of blessing the kids, helping them, in the name of Christ, as Christians, giving them these bunk beds for free. And because we had this vision and this mission, fairly simple, all said and done, God's presence in Thad's kitchen, as we talked about this, just the way that we gelled as a team, the way that we were able to work together to accomplish this goal was really, really just amazing and so wonderful to see.
Hey, I just wanted to share one of the many ways I've seen God work in the ministry of blessing beds. The one that sticks out the most to me is just God providing. And there's a laundry list of times where this has happened. Everything from, hey, we ran out of stain tonight, but wait, somebody from Colfax is going to be randomly bringing us stain because they had excess from when they redid their deck, and they're just going to donate it. And it's the same stain that we've used on every bed. To another time when we were all out of mattresses and we needed some, and we found a warehouse on the west side that was selling all of their mattresses, over 120 mattresses, and at the time we didn't have any funds to cover that, not even close. And there had only been 2 or 3 of us that had actually known of this situation, and so we had talked about it and prayed about it, and the very next day we got a phone call about a donation. And when we picked it up, it was the exact amount we needed to cover all of the mattresses. You could chalk it up to coincidence, but I think it's much bigger than that. It's definitely God providing exactly when we need and what we need.
So, Blessing Beds was a really fun opportunity. There was so much community that came together in so many different ways, because we would all just go to Thad's house 3 nights a week, and just anybody could come, college kids, people with families, whatever you wanted to do. Didn't matter how much experience you had, or if you knew anybody or what, you could just come. Someone would show you what to do. You would help actually physically make a bunk bed. If you wanted to hang out after, there was always a fire going and music playing, and it was so much fun and filled with so much joy. In those moments there, you could really tell that God was showing up, just from the pure outreach and volunteering aspect of it, and the kindness that everyone put forth, and relationships grew out of that, which was really cool.
Getting to have the drive back together, back to the Blessing Beds headquarters, and just talking about, hey, did you see this kid's face, or hey, did you see that, or did you see how this person did that, and just going back through and seeing how just celebrating the highs for that day. And then it was always super fun because the next day would be Sunday, and then at church we would all get to share and talk about, hey, like that was so cool, and we just kept reliving those moments. And so I think that those are things that are going to stick with me for the rest of my life, thankfully, and I will always remember and be so thankful for everybody that I met and got to spend time with through the Blessing Beds program. And it's just so cool to see how just one little small act of kindness can go such a long way.
Hey, so there are so many ways in which I've seen God at work through the ministry that is Blessing Beds. And one way in which I'd like to give an example is in seeing faith in humanity restored for some people through this ministry, namely parents that I've seen, just the parents of the kids that have received some of those beds. And I want to read off an email that we received from one of the recipient parents, because I think it sums up that in just a really good way. So it says, "Thank you for bringing joy to my children. Thank you for your interest in making some of my children's dreams come true. Thank you for your appreciation and accuracy. Thank you for everyone who gave and helped and sacrificed the time for the happiness of others. Thank you from heart to heart. Thank you from children to people who understand the meaning of childhood. Thank you to those who helped parents provide something for their children. Thank you to those who understand the meaning of the narrow situation for a father who does not have the food of his day to feed his children. Thank you to those who saved the faces of parents in front of their children. Thank you from heart to heart for those who feel and help families in this city." I just think that sums it up really well. We're just helping restore faith in humanity in a society that oftentimes can only focus on the negative, and I think that that's really something special and something that just makes it so worth it.
When I look at an organization like Blessing Beds, it's impossible for me not to see the Holy Spirit at work. There are obvious, tangible things that I have seen, such as a need coming financially and my company being able to match that need to the exact dollar amount in order to purchase the materials needed to continue the mission. But when I take a step back and look at what the Holy Spirit is doing in the community, to me, that is a much bigger image of what God is doing. I see so many people from different backgrounds, different beliefs, different walks of life, coming together to serve their fellow neighbor. And whether they know it or not, they have a calling in their heart that to me is evident that the Holy Spirit is working through them to fulfill God's plans that He's put in motion already. And to me, when I look at all of these people coming together to serve their neighbor, to fulfill the dreams of kids to get a bed, whether they know it or not, that selfless act to me is the most evident thing I've ever seen of God working through this community, using Blessing Beds to help fulfill His mission.
And then of course, God was showing up in the families that we were able to bless with these bunk beds. More often than not, they were in really difficult financial struggle and just, were taken down a peg and life was kind of hitting them rough. And for them to get something as simple as a bed for their kids to sleep on meant the world to them. And just people on a random Saturday taking time out of their day to go help put that up free of charge, just out of the kindness of their hearts. I think these families were entirely incredibly grateful, and I think in return it really showed God's love through, generosity and prayer and love. And overall, it is a true honor to have been a part of that. I miss it dearly, and I miss the community aspect. And to be honest, my faith grew quite a bit throughout that whole experience. So yeah, God was showing up in a lot of ways. So
and then I would say the last and most obvious to most people from the outside, the way that you'd see that we saw God's hand at work was, of course, giving the beds to the kids themselves. I only went on one delivery, and it was amazing to do so. I wish I had gone on more. But of course, being able to see the look on these kids' faces, being able to give them a bunk bed for free that they didn't buy or whatever. It was just a gift. And to know that we were doing it in the name of God, as Christians, giving them this gift was just absolutely wonderful. And kind of in a broader sense, it's a picture of us, because everything we receive from God is a gift as well. We forget it a lot of the time. We're ungrateful. But when I saw these kids receive these amazing bunk beds and just be so happy, so thankful for it. It was a reminder to be, the same with every single gift that we receive, whether it's the air we breathe, or of course salvation itself, or our friends around us, our family, all the different gifts that we get. We kind of saw ourselves in microcosm in these kids.
Hi, my name's Wendy, and I've been with Blessing Beds almost from the beginning. So I've had a lot of opportunities to see God at work through Blessing Beds in a lot of different ways, like when the kids see their beds for the first time, these huge smiles, or when they get to use power tools to make their own bed, or when the parents are watching the kids make their own bed, build their own bed, and the gratefulness, the thankfulness that comes from them, and the selfless time and effort that all the volunteers put in to get all the work done.
I can't tell you how many times we sat around a fire in a backyard or after a delivery day where we discussed things that we might be short on, things that we had a need for. It was, you name it, pillows, or it was lumber. It was one thing or another on different occasions, and we would discuss how there was a need. And without even voicing it out loud to others yet, there were times where at random that need was just met. And it was just amazing because God would just put it in someone's heart to reach out to one of us and let us know, hey, I've got this something extra, wondering if you guys need it. And it was exactly what we needed. Or if it was just someone who was able to provide something in bulk that we needed, and they just happened to feel the need to reach out to us and let us know. And it just happened to be the very need that we had just discussed amongst ourselves that we had for the ministry, and just time after time it was met. I mean, there's just so many examples of that, and to me it just showed that God's in the midst of it, and one way or another, if he's going to put us in a situation to be able to help others, he's also going to put things in place so that we can do it, even if it's in ways that we weren't sure. I mean, trying to do this ministry in the middle of COVID, when so many things were shut down, when things were just not moving supply chain wise, and we still were one way or another able to get kids off the floor and into their own bed, is just amazing, the ways that we can't even count.
On a more personal note, when I came to Blessing Beds, I wasn't done with God, but I was done with his people. And though Blessing Beds is not a Christian organization, it is run by people who love the way Christ intended. God had a lot of work to do through Blessing Beds to get me to a place where I feel accepted and useful, where I feel loved.
Do you like your new bed? Are you testing it out? Is it comfy? Yeah. Is it nap time? No.
All right, fast forward to 2023, and Blessing Beds is a nonprofit with a board, a website, and there's an app coming out soon too.
It's crazy.
And we're moving forward with plans to start Blessing Beds chapters in new areas around the country. There was a time when we thought trusting God to provide and help and show us the way to supply 500 beds was a huge deal. And after seeing God come through over and over and seeing him bless and supply in these crazy ways, maybe he's stretched our faith muscle so much that 500 beds doesn't even seem like a big deal anymore. Now, having 500 locations around the country is something that's totally possible with God.
Hang on. Well, if you want to know more about starting a Blessing Beds chapter in your area, please reach out to the team at info@blessingbeds.com. And of course, if you want to learn more about Blessing Beds, you can go directly to the website, blessingbeds.com. Find us on all the social media at Blessing Beds. All right, scene, whatever, the final take. Episode 7, the final take. Ready?
So as we learned today, sharing your God stories is so important, and we want to hear yours. So please leave us a comment below, send us an email, but we can't wait to get them.
Yeah, and if you like this out-of-the-box style of learning the Bible, be sure to subscribe to our channel, like this video, share it with people that you think it will really connect with. Speaking of videos, have you checked out some of the other videos that we've made?
Yeah, like the ones we just did in Banff recently. Oh my gosh, the scenery is incredible, but also there's a really awesome God story of God doing some incredible work there too.
We look forward to seeing you wherever we are out on our next journey.